What do we say about the political objectives of the Rouhani's trip, the president of the Islamic regime of Iran, to the 70th Assembly meeting of the United Nations? What do we say about the so-called normalization of the relationship between the Islamic regime, Western countries, and the United States? And what does it mean for the struggle of the working class, for the struggle of the youth, for the struggle of the women in Iran, for freedom, equality, prosperity, and the overthrow of the Islamic regime of Iran? Rouhani is going to meet with the heads of states because on the side of the General Assembly meetings at the United Nations, they have also agreed, the countries 5+1 and the Islamic regime have tentatively agreed to meet and talk about the nuclear issues. But everyone knows that there is more at the stake, and this is basically part of the policies of one faction of the Islamic regime in order to so-called advance the relationship and normalize the relationship with the West and United States on the top of this list. But what is the purpose? Why would one faction try to normalize the relationship wherein the other faction, the Khamenei and the super right-wing faction of the Islamic regime, are adamantly against it? The rift, the division that exists is real, is about the future of the Islamic regime of Iran. The Rouhani and Rafsanjani faction basically strongly believes that normalization of the relationship of the Islamic regime with the West would ensure and guarantee the duration of the life of the Islamic regime, and that is their main leverage in order to advance themselves within the Islamic regime as one faction and also advance the cause and the lifeline of the Islamic regime in Iran. At the same time, the other faction strongly believes that any normalization would undermine the historic line of the Islamic regime, which is blind anti-Americanism. And Rafsanjani and Rouhani's faction are putting all their eggs in this basket. At the same time, within the opposition, the right-wing opposition of the Islamic regime, there are these nationalists, these Islamists, that they believe that in order to reform the Islamic regime and make it palatable for the people of Iran, there should also be some sort of a normalization of the relationship with the West. And that is how the Islamic regime can be reformed and prolong its objective. So what we see is the following. Both factions of the Islamic regime, their purpose, their aims, their objective is how to prolong the life of the Islamic regime, but they have different policies. They have different tactics that they pursue. One would say with the blind anti-Americanism, we will achieve that. The other faction would say with the normalization of the relationship with the West, we could achieve that. And that's what they're saying. But we the working class, we the youth, we the women, we those who are fight for the freedom, equality, and prosperity in Iran, believe that neither the normalization nor the basically intensification of the rivalries would immediately mean anything for the betterment of the working condition of the life and on the political situation and the cultural situation in Iran. We know that, and we emphasize that. During the presidency of Rouhani, more than 700 prisoners have been executed. The number of executions has increased during the Rouhani's term compared to Ahmadinejad's term. We indicate that any normalization of the relationship with the West would not mean immediately betterment of the life and economic conditions in Iran. We are independently against any economic sanctions. We believe that the economic sanctions are weapons of mass destruction. They should be removed from the political scene. At the same time, we do not have any illusion that the normalization with the West and the Islamic regime will provide any means of a better life for the working people, the women, the freedom lovers, and freedom fighters in Iran. So these illusions should be addressed. These illusions basically are propaganda of one faction of the Islamic regime and their supporters within the right-wing opposition of the Islamic regime in Iran, and also one faction of the Western governments, the United States, Obama's administration, and that faction also believes that they could use this process of normalization to change, to gradually change, as opposed to regime change, to gradually change the Islamic regime and make it more palatable for the West as a regime that they will have to deal with in this regard. But we people in Iran, the working class, the women, the youth, believe that in order to advance the cause of freedom and prosperity in Iran, we should have to eradicate and overthrow the Islamic regime. We are against the Islamic regime. At the same time, we are against the militaristic policies and the right wing that basically pursue those policies. We have no alignment with neither of these two camps, the camps of the Islamic regime and the camps of the US militaries and its allied forces in NATO and Israel and so on. We believe that we should be protesting the presence of Rouhani as a member of a criminal machineries of Islamic regime in Iran. We strongly oppose the presence of these members of this regime. We strongly oppose any legitimization of the Islamic regime, and we strongly indicate to everyone that if they are on the side of freedom, if they are on the side of equality, if they are on the side of progressiveness, there should be also on the side of, for the overthrowing, revolutionary overthrow of the Islamic regime. At the same time, they should be also on the side to oppose any military action, any sanction against these type of regimes. We stand in the line of the progressive people. We stand in the camp of the progressive people to overthrow the Islamic regime, and we are for the prosperity of the people, not the prosperity of the ruling class, the 1% that rule the societies. Any advancement of the working class in their working conditions is basically and could only be as a direct result of their solidarity, of their advancement, of their struggles for freedom, for equality, for justice in Iran. And that basically requires the overthrowing of the Islamic regime of Iran. Rouhani wants to normalize the relationship so that they could prolong the life of the Islamic regime. We are neither against it nor for it. We are for freedom, equality, prosperity, and that requires the overthrowing of the Islamic regime. This is our message at the United Nations. This is what we are going to say in the protest struggles that are going to be launched in New York, and this is what we call all the progressive to join our rank in this fight, the fight of the people, side of the people, for a better future, for a better world.